So RFK Jr. Is out there on the campaign trail, I guess you can say. He's still trying to get on a whole bunch of ballots. He wants to be the independent candidate for this election. Cornel West is also running as an independent. Look, I got to be honest. I don't know how many ballots he's actually going to end up getting on because it's an incredibly onerous process. It's different state by state. It's almost certainly the case he won't get on every ballot. It's likely I don't even know if he'll get on half, to be honest with you. We'll see. Look, he would impress me if he gets on like over half of the ballots. But either way he's running. Some polls have him as high as 15%. Will he actually end up getting that? I kind of doubt it. The best third-party candidate, independent run in modern history was Ross Perot, and I think he got like 19% of the vote. But he ended up not even getting one electoral college vote. So functionally, he will end up serving as just a spoiler, assuming he gets on the ballots. Okay, so, but he's out there. He's making his case. He's doing his thing. And he made a comment the other day that this is one of the classic, like, old school comments that drives me fucking crazy. It's something I've been hearing my whole life. It's about, well, what do you blame for mass shooting? He goes right to, like, the old boomer ass, just, like, shoot from the hip, intuitive talking points as to what he thinks is to blame. Let's watch and we'll break it down.
We've always had abundance of guns in this country. In the past 20 years, there's been no per capita increase in the amount of guns we have, and yet these killings, these mass killings, have exploded. And we need to look at, at other reasons for that as well, a potential reason. NIH has not studied the etiology or the cause of gun violence since 1996. And NIH needs to be studying them to see if there's connections to some of the SSRI and psychiatric drugs people are taking, whether there's connections to video games.
So he's trying to say, yeah, guns, we've got a lot of guns, but we've always had a lot of guns, so don't look at the guns. Don't look at the guns. You know, hey, maybe it's SSRIs or video games. Oh, for the love of Christ, man. This is like the 17th time on this show we've had to go over this. So Trump suggested a while ago that video games are to blame for mass shootings. Researchers have long sought links between real-world violence and bloody video games. Quote, "We found a whole lot of nothing," said one expert. So this, just to be clear, this is not the only study that has come to this conclusion. There are a number of studies that have looked into violent video games and if they cause violence. And the takeaway is absolutely not. There's no link at all. There are some countries that play more video games and more violent video games than we play here. And they have like a fraction of the mass shootings. So on that alone, it's like, what are we really talking about here? It turns out if you're playing like Call of Duty or something, you know you're playing a video game. You know you're not shooting real people. It's not like if you go play Call of Duty or Rainbow Six, or I don't even know what the new ones are because I'm ancient as fuck, that you'll be like, I really want to kill my neighbor now. That doesn't happen. Come on, man. Like, what are we doing here? But okay, but then the other point, well, I think it's it could be the psychiatric medication. They've also studied this. So there was a thing that went viral in 2023, a post that tried to blame school shootings on antidepressants. The claim was that 90% of school shootings were linked to antidepressants. And it was a March 30th Instagram post. Psych meds linked to 90% of school shootings. The body of the article says some 90% of school shootings over more than a decade have been linked to a widely prescribed type of antidepressant called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs. Okay, here's what they say. This is in USA Today. Researchers have not found any link between antidepressants and school shootings. Available studies suggest a minority of school shooters were prescribed medication prior to committing their crimes. Experts found no causal link between shooters and medication. The shooter, who killed 3 children and 3 staff members at a Nashville elementary school on March 27th, was being treated for an emotional disorder before the attack, according to local police. This revelation led some social media users to blame mental illness and even medication for school shootings. The post shared on Instagram focuses on SSRIs. But Dr. Ray Gurgis, an associate professor of clinical psychiatry at the Columbia University Department of Psychiatry and the lead researcher of a 2022 study on mass murders, told USA Today there's no evidence of a link between medication and shootings. SSRIs and psych meds in general are not responsible for mass shootings or violence in any way. Not only are a small minority of mass shooters taking therapeutic doses of these medications at the time of the mass shootings, but these psych meds have specific anti-violence properties. So in other words, the problem is much more likely to be that these motherfuckers who are doing the shootings are not on SSRIs. They're not on psychiatric medication. They're not doing therapy. They're not addressing any underlying problems that they may have for a propensity to violence. If you understand the way these antidepressants work, the layman's description of it is, me no have enough happy chemicals in brain. Me add more happy chemicals to make me more normal and be okay. Like, that's the gist of it. Hey, something's off chemically, so let me take a pill to bring my chemicals back to homeostasis and a baseline that is reasonably happy. Like, that's the whole idea. There's serotonin, there's dopamine, there's all these different, like, happiness chemicals, and people who are depressed have a deficiency in that. And so it is much more likely, if you give somebody an antidepressant, that they won't commit violence. So the ironic thing is, they have it, like, totally backwards. Even in the instances where some people were prescribed one of these things and they do a mass shooting, it is much more likely they weren't taking their pills. And that led them to act deranged and then go do something very, very bad. They say what that means is that if a mass murderer happens to be taking a psychiatric medication, the medication was probably incidental, as is nearly all mental illness when present among mass murders. Look, the bottom line is, this argument that's being made, oh, it's the video games, oh, it's the pills, it is a total distraction from the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is, in this country, we have more guns than people. Okay? We are absolutely drowning in firearms. And it just so happens, when you have that many guns, there are more shootings. It just is, right? It's like, it's a tautology to point out, if you don't have guns, you can't do mass shootings, right? Now, you might say, hey, Kyle, I don't want to live in a society where there's like zero guns. Fair enough. I actually happen to agree with you. I don't want to have 350 million, and I don't want to have zero. I want somewhere in the middle there. But take, like, Japan, for example. They have virtually no guns, and they have virtually no shootings. What a shock, right? No, it's not surprising at all. Here's the reality. If what the conservatives said is true, we'd already be the most peaceful country in the world, because they say more guns equals more peace. The more firearms you have, the good guys outnumber the bad guys, so the good guys keep the bad guys in check. That's the way the argument goes. We've heard it 1,000 times over. But if that was true, we would already have the fewest shootings in this country compared to any other country. No, it turns out, since we have the most guns, we have the most shootings. And if you give any country the number of guns that we have, there would also be more violence there, right? So in my opinion, the answer is not to say nobody can have a gun under any circumstances, or everybody and their mother should have a gun. The answer is somewhere in the middle. I like the base, universal background checks. You can't have a gun if there's criminal history, ban on high-capacity magazines. You should have a little test in order to prove that you're responsible enough to have it, et cetera, et cetera. I like the basic regulations. But to try to say, don't at all look at the guns, but it's the SSRIs and it's the video game, that's just wrong. Like, you're just wrong. Those things are not a problem. They're not even close to a problem. So let's stop pretending. And by the way, you are scapegoating, like, people who play video games. They didn't bother anybody. They didn't do anything to anybody. They're just playing video games. Fuck off. Let them live. Right? Also, trying to stigmatize the taking of psychiatric medication is like an attempt to make fewer people take psychiatric medication, when that's a bad idea. I know plenty of people in my own life who take these things, and they've been a fucking game changer. Okay? They've improved their lives dramatically. It gets you to the point where, hey, before I didn't even want to get out of bed to go through the day. Now I have the energy to get out of bed and then do other things that might make me feel better, like exercise and eat right or whatever it might be. So it's just fucking boomer brain just spewing nonsense. Nothing wrong with video games. Nothing wrong with the antidepressants. In fact, in these instances that there are mass shootings and they were prescribed these pills, it's a minority, first of all. But second of all, it's likely that the people who were prescribed it weren't even taking it, and they were more likely to do violence as a result of that. It turns out when you put more happy chemicals in your brain, you're happier and less likely to kill people. Not exactly rocket science. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.